Perfect, I told my daughter-in-law Madison when she announced that 15 members of her family were coming to spend Christmas at my ranch. I'm going to visit my old army buddies in Dallas. You all can handle the grilling and cleanup. I'm not your hired handyman. Her face went pale as if she'd seen a ghost, but what she didn't know was that the real surprise was just beginning. My name is Preston Crawford. I'm 67 years old, and for the last 3 years, I've been treated like the maintenance man in my own home. It all started when my son Mason married that woman. From the very first day, Madison decided I was her personal repair service. Preston, fix my car. Preston, install this ceiling fan. Preston, grill for my book club. And I, like a fool, always said yes. I thought it was how I could keep my family together after losing my wife Sarah, but I had reached my breaking point. That Tuesday in December, Madison swept into my garage as she always did without asking, with that fake smile I'd grown to despise. She was wearing some ridiculously expensive designer jacket, undoubtedly paid for with my son's money. Her heels clicked against my concrete floor like little hammers on my last nerve. "Preston," she said in that condescending tone she reserved for me, "I have wonderful news. My entire family is coming to spend Christmas here. It's only 15 people. Only 15 people. As if that were a small number. As if I were a machine designed for grilling and cleanup. I saw the calculation in her eyes as she continued with her master plan. She leaned against my workbench, crossing her arms, and began listing them off like reading a grocery order. "I've already spoken with my Uncle Parker, my sister Harper, my brother-in-law Wesley. Everyone's coming. My nieces and nephews will be here. My cousins from Dallas. It's going to be a perfect Christmas BBQ. She took a dramatic pause, expecting my usual panicked reaction. "Of course, you'll handle everything. The grilling, the sides, setting up the patio. We'll need at least 3 briskets and that amazing dry rub you make. Oh, and you'll have to clean the pool area and set up all the outdoor furniture. I want it to look perfect for the Instagram photos." She waited for my typical "yes, Madison." But this time was different. This time, something inside me had finally snapped for good. I looked her directly in the eye with a calm that surprised even me. "Perfect," I repeated, watching her smile begin to falter. "It will be a perfect Christmas for you all because I won't be here." The silence that followed was deafening. Madison blinked several times as if she hadn't heard correctly. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. The clicking of her heels stopped abruptly. "What do you mean you won't be here?" she finally managed to articulate, her voice trembling slightly. She straightened up against the workbench, her perfect posture beginning to crumble. "Exactly what you heard. I'm going to visit my army buddies in Dallas. You all can grill, clean, and serve yourselves. I'm not your employee." I watched the color drain completely from her face. Her hands began to shake. The coffee cup she was holding clinked against its saucer. For the first time in 3 years, Madison was speechless. But Preston," she stammered, "I already told everyone to come. It's all planned. You can't do this." "Of course I can. It's my ranch." Those 5 words landed like a bomb in the garage. Madison's jaw dropped, her face shifting from shock to indignation. She shot up from leaning against the workbench, her heels clicking again, but this time with desperation. "This is ridiculous. Mason is not going to allow this. Mason can have whatever opinion he likes, but the decision has been made. For the first time, I was in control." But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that my decision wasn't spontaneous. I had been planning this for months, and I had my reasons. Reasons that would soon leave them all speechless. This ranch meant everything to me. I'd bought it back in 1998 for $450,000 with my engineering salary and Sarah's teaching income. We'd dreamed of hosting family gatherings here, of grandchildren running through the oak trees, of quiet retirement years watching sunsets from the porch. Sarah never got to see those retirement years, but this place still held every memory of our life together. Madison's expression morphed from shock to fury in a matter of seconds. Her cheeks flushed and her eyes narrowed like a snake about to strike. She stepped toward me, invading my personal space as she always did when she wanted to intimidate me. "You know what, Preston? I always knew you were selfish. But this is the absolute limit." Her voice became venomous, each word dripping with contempt. "My family is coming from far away, some from out of state, and you're going to ruin their Christmas over a whim? A whim? 3 years of mistreatment using my workshop like her personal storage unit and treating me like hired help. And she called it a whim." I felt rage rise in my chest, but I remained calm. I had learned to control my emotions after so much time as her victim. "That's not my problem," I replied with a calm that unnerved her even more. "You should have consulted me before inviting 15 people to my ranch." "Our ranch!" she shrieked, losing her composure completely. "Mason is your son. This place will be ours one day." There it was, the truth that had always hung in the air but had never been spoken aloud. Madison didn't see me as family. She saw me as a temporary obstacle before she inherited everything I had built with years of hard work and sacrifice. "Interesting perspective," I murmured, watching her pupils dilate with panic as she realized what she had revealed. "Very interesting." At that moment, I heard the truck pulling into the driveway. Mason was home from work. Madison ran to him like a child tattling to her father, her heels clattering with desperate urgency. Mason, your father has gone insane. He says he won't help with Christmas. He says he's going to Dallas and leaving us alone with my entire family." I heard their muffled voices from the living room. Madison spoke in a rush, her tone sharp and dramatic. Mason murmured responses I couldn't make out. After a few minutes, their footsteps approached the garage. My son appeared in the doorway, his work shirt wrinkled after a day at the car dealership, his face tired but annoyed. Behind him, Madison followed like a shadow, arms crossed and a triumphant expression on her face. She clearly expected him to put me in my place. "Dad," Mason began in that patronizing tone he had adopted since his marriage, "Madison told me about your decision. Don't you think you're being a little dramatic?" Dramatic? My own son was calling me dramatic for refusing to be his wife's handyman. I felt something cold and hard settle in my stomach. Something that had been growing for months finally crystallized in that moment. "No, Mason, I'm not being dramatic. I'm being clear. But Dad, it's Christmas. It's a time for family. Madison already invited everyone. We can't cancel now. I didn't say to cancel. I said I won't be here." Madison stepped forward, placing herself between Mason and me like a human barrier. "See what I mean? He's become completely irrational. What will my family think? What am I going to tell them?" "Tell them the truth," I answered calmly. "That you assumed I would be your handyman without consulting me, and that you were mistaken." Mason sighed deeply, running a hand through his hair as he did when he was frustrated. "Dad, be reasonable. You know Madison can't grill for 15 people by herself. And why not? I've grilled for her parties for years. It's time she learned." "But I work," Madison protested. "I can't take days off to prepare. My career is important." Her career. A part-time position at a marketing firm where she made $12 an hour, though she'd been telling Mason she earned $18. But of course, her career was more important than my time, my energy, my dignity. "Then hire a caterer," I suggested with a sweet smile. "There are many excellent BBQ joints in Austin. Catering costs a fortune," Mason exclaimed. "Why spend thousands of dollars when you can?" He stopped abruptly, realizing what he was about to say. "When I can do it for free," I finished for him. "Like always. Like the employee you think I am." The silence stretched between us like a widening crack. Madison and Mason exchanged nervous glances. I could see the wheels turning in their heads, trying to find a way to manipulate me into giving in. "Look, Dad," Mason said finally, adopting a softer tone. "I know you've been a bit sensitive lately. Maybe you're feeling isolated since Mom passed." Sensitive? Isolated? He was reducing me to a grieving widower who didn't know his own mind. The fury I had been containing began to boil beneath the surface, but I managed to keep my voice steady. "There's nothing sensitive about this, Mason. This is about one very clear thing: respect. And for 3 years, neither you nor your wife has shown me any." "That's not true," Madison protested. "We've always treated you well. You're part of the family. The part of the family that fixes, builds, and grills while you two have fun. The part of the family that's never consulted but always expected to comply." Mason came closer, placing a hand on my shoulder as he used to do as a boy when he wanted something. But he was no longer the sweet child I had raised. He was a man who had chosen his wife over his father in every conflict for the past 3 years. "All right, Dad, I understand you're upset, but think about it. It's just 1 week. After New Year's, everything goes back to normal." Normal. Their normal, where I was invisible except when they needed me. Where my feelings didn't matter as long as their life was comfortable. where my ranch had ceased to be my sanctuary and had become their personal event space. No, Mason, things are not going back to normal because I'm leaving tomorrow. They both froze. Madison was the first to react, her voice rising an octave. Tomorrow? Tomorrow? Tomorrow, I confirmed, enjoying the panic that began to gleam in their eyes. I already have everything arranged. What they didn't know was that I truly did have everything arranged, just not in the way they thought. This is insane, Madison shrieked, her eyes wide as she paced my garage like a caged animal. You can't leave tomorrow. It's impossible. My family arrives in 2 days. Well, you should have thought of that before you took for granted that I would be your handyman, I replied, maintaining my serene tone as I calmly organized my tools. Every movement was calculated to show that her dramatics didn't faze me. Mason just stood there, shifting nervously from one foot to the other, clearly torn between supporting his hysterical wife and trying to reason with me. His eyes darted between the two of us as if he were watching a tense tennis match. Dad, please, he finally murmured. At least tell us where you're going. When will you be back? I'm going to visit my army buddy Carl in Dallas, I lied smoothly, and I'll be back after New Year's. The lie came so naturally it surprised even me, but it was necessary. They couldn't know my real plans. Not yet. After New Year's? Madison practically choked on her own words. But what are we going to do? I already told everyone to come. My Uncle Parker already bought his plane tickets from Dallas. Harper canceled her plans. Wesley took time off work. Those are their problems, not mine. I saw desperation begin to replace the rage on Madison's face. Her perfectly manicured hands trembled as she gripped my workbench, her knuckles white from the pressure. Preston. Her voice suddenly changed, becoming syrupy and manipulative. You know I've always thought of you as a second father. You're so important to me, to us. You can't just abandon us like this. There it was, the switch in tactics from fury to emotional manipulation. I had seen this play many times before, but it no longer worked on me. If you really considered me a father, you wouldn't treat me like hired help. But I don't treat you like hired help. I just thought you enjoyed working on projects for the family. I thought you liked to feel useful. Useful. That word pierced me like a dagger. For 3 years, I had believed that being useful was my way of keeping the peace, of securing a place in my son's life. But now I understood that being useful had only made me a shadow in my own home. You know what, Madison? You're right. I do like to feel useful. That's why I'm going to be useful to myself for the first time in years. Mason intervened again, his frustration now evident in every line on his face. Dad, this isn't fair. You know we don't have the money to hire professional BBQ catering for 15 people. The down payment on our new condo wiped out our savings. A new condo. This was the first I was hearing about a new condo. My eyes narrowed as I processed this information. Since when were they planning to move? And why hadn't they told me? What new condo? I asked, my voice laced with dangerous curiosity. Madison and Mason exchanged a guilty look. The kind of look you share when you've just revealed something that was supposed to be a secret. Well, Mason began, looking down at his shoes, we were going to tell you after the holidays. We found an incredible place downtown. 2 bedrooms, city view, gym in the building. Sounds expensive, I observed, keeping my tone neutral, though my mind was racing. Well, yes, but it's worth the investment. And don't worry, we're not moving far. Only 20 minutes from here. 20 minutes. Close enough to keep using my ranch as their personal BBQ joint, but far enough to have their privacy. How convenient. And how do you plan to pay for it? I asked, though I already had a suspicion about the answer. Madison's face suddenly lit up as if she'd found the perfect solution to all our problems. That's why it's so important that we have a perfect Christmas. My Uncle Parker is very generous when he's impressed, and my brother-in-law Wesley has connections in real estate. If everything goes well, they could help us with Mason's sales career. There it was, the real reason behind the grand Christmas BBQ. It wasn't about family or tradition. It was about money, about impressing wealthy relatives to get financial favors. And I was the cornerstone of their manipulation scheme. I see, I murmured, letting the silence hang as they both waited for my response. So you need your Christmas to be perfect to impress the rich family. Exactly, Madison exclaimed, relieved that I finally understood the gravity of the situation. I knew you'd get it. You're so smart, Preston. You always know the right thing to do. The right thing. For 3 years, the right thing had been to sacrifice my comfort, my time, my dignity to make their lives easier. But now I had a completely different perspective on what was right. You're right, Madison. I know exactly what the right thing to do is. That's why my decision stands. I'm leaving tomorrow. The hope vanished from their faces like spilled water. Madison began to breathe rapidly, on the verge of a panic attack. You can't do this. You can't ruin our future over a tantrum. It's not a tantrum. It's a well-thought-out decision. But what will my family think when they arrive and there's no one here to receive them properly? What will they think when they see there's no BBQ prepared? They will think that their niece invited them without having the capacity to be a host, and they will be correct. Mason stepped closer, his desperation now palpable. Dad, please, if you really need a vacation, we can postpone it. After New Year's, you can go wherever you want, for as long as you want. We'll pay for your trip, the hotel, everything. They'd pay for my trip. With what money, I wondered, if they had just said the condo deposit left them with no savings. But it didn't matter. Their offer was 3 years too late. The offer is tempting, Mason, but my decision is made. This is emotional blackmail, Madison burst out, her mask of sweetness finally falling away completely. You're using our situation to manipulate us. Emotional blackmail. The words hung in the air like an unwitting confession. Because if I was engaging in emotional blackmail by refusing to be their free handyman, what had they been doing for 3 years? You know what emotional blackmail is, Madison? It's making me feel guilty every time I don't want to grill for your friends. It's telling me that a good father-in-law always puts the family first when I refuse to fix things after your parties. It's assuming my plans don't matter because I'm retired and have nothing better to do. Every word was a bullet that hit its mark. I saw them both flinch slightly with each accusation because they knew it was true. All of it was true. That's not the same thing, Madison stammered, but her voice had lost all its previous force. You're right. It's not the same. Because what you two have done is much worse. You have taken my generosity for granted for years. The garage fell into tense silence. I could hear the ticking of the wall clock, the hum of the refrigerator inside, Madison's ragged breathing. But what I could hear most clearly was the sound of my own approaching freedom. Because tomorrow, everything would change, and they had no idea just how much. That night, while Madison and Mason were still in the living room arguing in desperate whispers, I locked myself in my study and pulled out my laptop. It was time to set the second phase of my plan in motion. A plan that had been brewing for months, ever since I discovered something that changed my entire perspective on my dear daughter-in-law. 2 months earlier, while foolishly organizing Mason's home office at their request, I had found a forgotten folder among his papers filled with bank statements, printed emails, and legal documents. At first I thought they were work papers, but something caught my eye. Madison's name appeared again and again in transactions I didn't understand. That night, after they went to sleep, I returned to the office and reviewed everything meticulously. What I found chilled me to the bone. Madison had been spending money they didn't have. A lot of money. Credit cards in Mason's name that he knew nothing about, personal loans using false income information, and compulsive shopping sprees at luxury stores that added up to over $25,000 in debt. But that wasn't all. I also found emails where Madison discussed with her friends how to manage Mason so he wouldn't discover her spending, how to keep him distracted while she kept shopping, and most chilling of all, a message thread where she planned to convince him to sell the ranch to invest in their future together. My ranch. The ranch I had lived on for 25 years. The ranch I had bought with my engineering salary, my savings, my sacrifices. Madison wanted Mason to sell it to pay off her compulsive shopping debts. That night I couldn't sleep. I stayed awake until dawn, processing the betrayal, the manipulation, the deceit. But along with the devastation, something else began to grow. A cold, calculated determination to protect myself. The next day, I began my own silent investigation. I hired a private detective, a discreet man my lawyer had recommended years ago. His name was Carl Jenkins, a former military police officer who understood discretion and thoroughness. I asked him to track all of Madison's financial activities. What we discovered was even worse than I had imagined. Not only was she a compulsive spender, but she had also been lying about her job. Her important career at the marketing firm was part-time, and she was barely making $12 an hour, but she had been telling Mason she earned $18 an hour. Where did the extra money for her personal expenses come from? The secret credit cards, of course. And there was more. Madison had been telling her relatives that we were much wealthier than we actually were. She had told them that Mason had a thriving business, that I had a considerable fortune, that our ranch was worth twice its actual $450,000 value. All lies to maintain her image as a successful, well-married woman. Carl's investigation revealed the full scope of her deception. Madison had been creating an elaborate fantasy for her family, painting herself as the wife of a successful businessman and the daughter-in-law of a wealthy retired engineer. She'd shown them photos of our ranch, describing it as a family estate. She'd talked about Mason's expanding automotive business when he was just a sales manager at a dealership. Most disturbingly, she'd hinted that I was planning to leave them substantial inheritance money. None of it was true. Mason made a decent living, but he wasn't wealthy. I had comfortable retirement savings, but I wasn't rich, and our ranch, while beautiful, was a modest property by Texas standards. But Madison had used these lies to borrow money from her family members, small amounts here and there, $2,000 from Uncle Parker for business expansion, $1,500 from Sister Harper for emergency medical bills, $3,000 from Cousin Wesley for ranch improvements. It all added up to another $10,000 in debt that her family didn't even realize was connected to her shopping addiction. Now, as I looked at my laptop screen in the quiet darkness of my study, I smiled for the first time in months, because I had taken steps they couldn't even imagine. First, I had moved all my savings to a new account at a different bank, an account Mason knew nothing about and would never have access to. Then I had consulted with my lawyer about how to protect the ranch's deed. It turned out there were very effective legal ways to ensure no one could force me to sell it. But my master stroke had been to contact Madison's family directly. Not all of them, just the ones who really mattered. Her Uncle Parker, the successful businessman from Dallas, her brother-in-law Wesley, the real estate agent who was supposedly going to help them, and her sister Harper, who worked in finance and had an impeccable reputation. I had sent them very polite emails introducing myself as Madison's concerned father-in-law. I told them I was worried about the young couple's delicate financial situation and wanted to ask their advice on how to help. Of course, I had accidentally attached some of the most alarming bank statements I had found, along with documentation of the loans Madison had taken from family members under false pretenses. The responses were immediate and explosive. Parker was furious at being deceived about Madison's real situation and demanded an immediate explanation. Wesley immediately canceled any plans for real estate assistance and threatened to call in his loan. Harper was so angry she threatened to come personally to sort out her younger sister's life and demanded full financial disclosure. But the best part was that none of them had said anything to Madison yet. They were waiting for the Christmas gathering to confront her in person. A gathering that would now be missing the host they expected, the BBQ they were promised, and the festive atmosphere Madison had painted in her lies. My phone vibrated with a text message. It was from Parker Torres. Mr. Preston, after reviewing the documents you sent, my family and I have decided to arrive a day earlier than planned. We want to speak with Madison about some very serious financial matters before the celebration. Would it be possible for you to receive us on the morning of the 23rd? The morning of the 23rd. Exactly when I would be packing my bags for my trip to Dallas. What a perfect coincidence. I replied quickly. Of course, Parker, it will be a pleasure to have you. However, I must inform you that I will be leaving for a trip that same day, so Madison and Mason will be your hosts. His response came in seconds. Perfect. That will be exactly what we need. I closed the laptop and leaned back in my chair, smiling in the dark. For 3 years, I had been the silent victim, the submissive father-in-law, the free handyman. But all that time, I had been observing, learning, understanding how my daughter-in-law really worked. Madison thought she was so smart, so manipulative, so clever. But she had gravely underestimated the older man who cleaned up her messes. She had assumed my age, and my apparent meekness meant I was helpless. Tomorrow morning, while she was still asleep, I would be packing my bags. Not for Dallas, as I had told them. My real destination was a luxury hotel just an hour away in downtown Austin, where I had booked a suite with a city view for the next 2 weeks. From there, I would have a front row seat to the collapse of the little kingdom of lies Madison had built. I would watch her family discover her deceptions. I would watch Mason finally open his eyes to the woman he had married. I would watch her whole, perfectly manipulated world fall apart piece by piece. And best of all, I wouldn't have to lift a finger to make it happen. Madison had dug her own grave with years of lies and deceit. I had simply taken the shovel out of her hands and showed her family where to look. Outside, I could hear that the argument in the living room had finally ended. Footsteps on the stairs, doors closing, the tense silence of a house full of unresolved conflicts. But I slept deeply that night. For the first time in 3 years, I slept with the smile of someone who knows that justice, even when it's late, always arrives. At 6 o'clock in the morning, my alarm clock rang like the anthem of freedom. I got up with an energy I hadn't felt in years. I showered peacefully and began to pack my bags. Every item I folded was another step toward my independence. Every possession I stored away was a silent declaration that I was no longer anyone's handyman. Madison and Mason were still asleep. I could hear their deep breathing from the hallway as I carried my suitcases down the stairs. I had prepared a note, which I left on the kitchen counter next to the spare house keys. A brief but precise note. Have decided to leave early for my trip. The ranch is in your hands. Enjoy your perfect Christmas. Preston. What the note didn't mention was that I had made a few additional preparations before leaving, like completely emptying the propane tanks for the grill and the outdoor refrigerator. After all, if they were going to host 15 people, they needed to learn to be responsible for their own supplies. I had also locked away all my good grilling tools, my special rubs and sauces, and my outdoor furniture cushions in my bedroom. If they wanted to impress the rich family, they would have to get their own equipment. But my final touch had been to disable the sprinkler system that kept the backyard looking perfect, a system that I maintained, but Madison always took credit for having such a beautiful yard. Starting today, she could experience what it really meant to maintain a property on her own. The taxi arrived promptly at 7 o'clock in the morning. As the driver loaded my bags, I took one last look at the ranch where I had lived for over 2 decades. A ranch that had been my sanctuary, then my prison, and now would once again be my fortress. Because even though I was leaving temporarily, this was still my ranch, and I had every intention of reclaiming it completely. The hotel where I checked in was everything I had dreamed of during my years of forced handyman service. The Driscoll Hotel in downtown Austin, a place Sarah and I had always talked about visiting but never quite got around to. A spacious suite with a city view, 24-hour room service, and most importantly, absolute silence. No one shouting for me from the garage, no one expecting me to appear with tools, no one assuming my time had no value. My phone started ringing at 10:47 in the morning. Mason, of course. "Dad, where are you? We found your note, but why did you leave so early?" His voice sounded confused, still sleepy. He had probably just discovered the empty propane tanks and the fact that no one was there to fix his weekend breakfast problems. "Good morning, Mason. I decided there was no point in prolonging the inevitable. You two have a lot to do to prepare, and I'm very much looking forward to some rest. But Dad, this is so sudden. Madison is, well, she's pretty upset." Upset. What a diplomatic way to say she was having a full-blown panic attack at the realization that she would actually have to take charge of her own life. I'm sure she'll manage perfectly. After all, she's a very capable woman. There was a long pause. I could hear voices in the background. Madison speaking in a rapid, hysterical tone. "Could you at least tell us where you are in case of an emergency? I am safe and in a good place. That's all you need to know. Dad, please. I know you're angry, but this is extreme. Madison's family arrives tomorrow and we don't know how—" "Mason," I interrupted him firmly, "you are 34 years old. Madison is 31. You are fully functional adults. I am certain you can solve your own problems without relying on a 67-year-old man." Another pause. This one longer. "Fine," he finally sighed. "But promise me you'll be okay. And when are you coming back?" "I'll be back when I'm ready. Enjoy your Christmas." I hung up before he could insist further. I immediately put my phone on silent mode. I knew the next few hours would be a constant bombardment of desperate calls and messages. But I had waited 3 years for this moment of peace. I wasn't going to let them ruin it. I ordered a Texas ribeye from room service, something I would never have grilled for myself because it would have seemed too extravagant by the standards of austerity Madison had imposed on my own ranch. As I ate slowly, savoring every bite, my phone blinked constantly with silenced notifications. The best part was yet to come, because tomorrow morning, exactly as I had calculated, Madison's family would begin to arrive. They would not find the perfect Christmas BBQ she had promised them. Instead, they would find the raw reality of who the woman who had been living on lies for years truly was. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I finally checked my messages. There were 12 missed calls from Mason, 23 from Madison, and an avalanche of texts escalating from confusion to pleading to outrage. But the message I was really interested in had arrived from Parker at noon. "Mr. Preston, my family and I will arrive tomorrow at 8 o'clock in the morning as agreed. We look forward to meeting you personally and having that important conversation with Madison. Thank you for your hospitality." Hospitality. If only he knew that by 8 o'clock tomorrow, the only hospitality they would find would be Madison trying to explain why the ranch was unprepared, why there was no BBQ setup, and why the generous father-in-law she had boasted so much about had mysteriously disappeared. I replied to Parker, "I regret to inform you that I had to move up my trip due to unexpected commitments. Madison and Mason will be delighted to host you. I'm sure you will have much to discuss." His response was immediate. "I understand perfectly. In fact, this might be for the best. Some conversations are better in private." Private. Exactly what they needed. A private conversation between a woman who had been lying for years and a family that finally knew the truth about her financial deceptions. That afternoon, as I enjoyed a massage at the hotel spa, I allowed myself to imagine the scene that would unfold tomorrow morning. Madison and Mason waking up in a panic, making a last-minute run to Home Depot for propane tanks, desperately trying to create the illusion of hospitality they had promised. And then, at 8 o'clock sharp, the sound of the doorbell announcing the arrival of the family who had come to collect on past due accounts. I couldn't help but smile as the masseuse worked on the knots of tension that had been in my shoulders for 3 years. Knots that were finally beginning to unravel, one by one, just like Madison's lies. The morning of December 23rd dawned clear and bright, and my phone exploded with calls. I woke to the first call from Mason at 6:30 in the morning. I didn't answer. While I leisurely ate Eggs Benedict with smoked salmon on my suite's balcony, I decided to check the voicemails. The first was from Mason. "Dad, please pick up. Madison is hysterical. We don't know how to set up the grill for 15 people. The propane tanks are empty and the equipment store doesn't open until 8 o'clock, and the family arrives at exactly that time. We need help urgently. Please, please call us." The second was from Madison, her voice completely broken. "Preston, I know you're mad at me and I understand why, but please don't make me look bad in front of my family. They traveled from so far away. My uncle, Parker, came from Dallas. Harper canceled important plans. I don't know how to BBQ for this many people. I don't even know where to start. I promise we'll talk later and fix everything, but right now, I desperately need your help." The third message was even better. Madison again, now sobbing. "Preston, I just checked the garage and the outdoor kitchen. Everything is locked away. Why is nothing accessible? How am I supposed to feed my family? Where is the good grilling equipment? Where are the patio cushions? Please, at least just tell me where you put everything. Just that, please." The fourth message came from a voice I didn't recognize. Madison's sister, Harper. Her tone was professional but cold. "Mr. Crawford, this is Harper Torres. I'm calling because my sister seems to be having some kind of breakdown about Christmas preparations. While I'm sympathetic, I'm more concerned about some financial documents that have come to my attention. We need to have a conversation about Madison's borrowing practices and the false information she's provided about your family's financial situation. I'll be arriving with Uncle Parker this morning." Ah, yes. The dawning realization that hosting requires planning, effort, and actual preparation. The tardy understanding that BBQ equipment doesn't maintain itself, that patios don't set themselves, that outdoor entertaining doesn't happen by magic. And now, the added pressure of a family that knew the truth about Madison's lies. But the message I was truly waiting for arrived at 7:15 in the morning. It was from Parker Torres himself, his voice carrying the authority of a successful businessman who didn't appreciate being deceived. "Mr. Preston, this is Parker, Madison's uncle. We arrived at the airport early and decided to come straight to your ranch. We expect to be there in 15 minutes. I want you to know that my family and I are very disappointed in the information that's come to light about Madison's conduct. This won't be the celebration she's expecting. Perfect. They would arrive at the peak of Madison and Mason's panic. At 8:20, my phone rang. This time, I answered. Dad. Mason's voice was trembling, on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Can you talk? Good morning, Mason. Of course I can talk. How is your morning going? Dad, please don't do this. Madison's family just arrived and we have nothing to offer them. Literally nothing. Madison is crying in the bathroom, and I don't know what to do. Have you explained the situation to them? What situation? How do I explain that my father decided to go on vacation right when we needed him most? When they needed me most? Not when I needed respect or understanding or a simple thank you for 3 years of service. Only when they needed me. Tell them the truth, Mason, that for 3 years you took it for granted that I would be your unpaid handyman, and that I finally decided I deserved a vacation. There was a pause. I could hear voices in the background, a mix of panic and confusion. Someone was speaking sternly, probably Parker asking where the main host was. At least, can you tell us where you always bought the supplies, what you used to make for special occasions, anything to help? Mason, I didn't always buy anything. I planned for weeks in advance. I researched recipes, made detailed supply lists, compared prices, and dedicated entire days to preparation. It wasn't magic. It was work. A lot of work. The silence on the other end told me he was finally beginning to understand the magnitude of what he had ignored for years. Look, he continued, his voice smaller, I know we've been inconsiderate, but right now I need practical solutions. What do I do with 15 hungry people in my living room? Order takeout. Call BBQ restaurants. Go to the store. Do what all responsible adults do when they have guests. But it's the holidays. Everything is busy or closed. The restaurants have no availability. Then maybe you should have thought of that before you invited 15 people without consulting the person you expected to do all the work. I heard a new voice in the background, a serious tone. Parker was clearly demanding an explanation. Dad, Madison's uncle wants to talk to you. He says he needs to understand what's going on. I would love to talk to him, but I'm on vacation. Tell him Madison can explain everything perfectly. After all, she's the one who organized this gathering. Please, Dad. Just 5 minutes. He's very confused and a little upset. I think he can help us solve this. Help us. Again. It was all about helping them. It was never about what I needed, what I deserved, or how they had made me feel for years. Mason, listen to me very carefully. For 3 years, every time you needed something, I was there. Every time Madison wanted to impress someone, I did the work. Every time you had problems, I was the solution. Today, for the first time in half a decade, you have to solve your own problems, and that is not my responsibility. But it's my family, he finally shouted, losing his composure. I heard Parker's clear voice in the background. Young man, I need to understand what kind of family gathering you organize. Where is the man of the house? Where is the grandfather who was supposed to host us? Parker had clearly understood from his conversations with Madison that I was the patriarch who organized these events, the main host, the person responsible for the family's hospitality. And now there was no one, just 2 confused adults finally facing the consequences of their own choices. Dad, please at least talk to him. Explain that there's been a misunderstanding. There is no misunderstanding, Mason. There is a reality that you refuse to see for years. And that reality is that without mutual respect, there is no functional family. I hung up. But this time, I didn't turn off my phone. I wanted to hear what happened next. 20 minutes later, my phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. Mr. Crawford, this is Parker Torres. I apologize for calling, but I need to speak with you directly. Good morning, Parker. I hope you're enjoying your visit to Texas. Mr. Crawford, I'm going to be very direct. We arrived at your ranch this morning expecting to meet the generous host Madison has described for months. Instead, we found chaos, no preparation, and a young woman who can't explain where you are or why nothing is ready for 15 guests. I see. And what has Madison told you about the situation? She's claiming you had some kind of emergency and left suddenly, but her story doesn't make sense. Nothing makes sense. The house is beautiful, but there's no food, no setup, no propane for grilling. It's like no one was actually planning to host anyone. That's because no one was, Parker. At least no one who was capable of actually doing it. There was a long pause. Mr. Crawford, I need to ask you some direct questions. The financial documents you sent me, are they accurate? Completely accurate. I obtained them directly from my son's files with his knowledge. And Madison's debt situation? $25,000 in credit card debt, plus the loans she took from family members under false pretenses about our financial situation. And she's been lying about her income? She makes $12 an hour part-time. She told Mason she makes $18. I see. Parker's voice had turned ice cold. Mr. Crawford, I need to apologize to you on behalf of my family. We had no idea Madison was using us as part of her deception. You weren't to know, Parker. She's very good at manipulation. There's something else. My sister Harper is here with me. She's a financial analyst, and she's been reviewing the loans Madison requested from family members. We're talking about over $10,000 in total, all based on lies about your family's wealth. I'm not surprised. Mr. Crawford, may I ask why you decided to leave at this particular moment? It seems like more than coincidence. I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. Parker, I've been Madison's unpaid handyman for 3 years. She assumed I would handle this gathering like all the others, without being asked, without being thanked, and certainly without being consulted. I decided it was time she learned what hosting actually requires. And where are you now? Enjoying a well-deserved vacation. There was a pause, then the sound of voices in the background. I could hear Harper speaking sharply, and what sounded like Madison crying. Mr. Crawford, I'm going to put you on speakerphone. Harper wants to speak with you, and I think Madison needs to hear this conversation. Of course. Mr. Crawford, this is Harper Torres. I want to thank you for bringing these financial irregularities to our attention. I've been reviewing Madison's requests for family loans, and every single one was based on false information about your family's income and assets. I'm sorry you had to discover it this way, Harper. Don't be. We needed to know. Madison told us you were planning to leave her a significant inheritance, and that this ranch was worth over $800,000. She used those lies to justify borrowing money for what she called temporary cash flow problems. The ranch is worth $450,000, and my will makes no provisions for Madison. I heard a sharp intake of breath, probably Madison realizing the full extent of her exposure. Harper continued, her voice professional but angry. She also told us that Mason's automotive business was expanding rapidly and needed capital investment. We now understand he's a sales manager at a dealership. That's correct. Madison. Parker's voice was stern, clearly addressing his niece directly. We need you to explain yourself, right now. There was a long silence. Then Madison's voice, shaky and defensive. I can explain everything. There's been a misunderstanding. What misunderstanding? Harper's voice was sharp. Did you or did you not tell Uncle Parker that Preston was planning to finance Mason's business expansion? I thought he might. Did you or did not tell me that you needed $1,500 for emergency medical bills when you were actually shopping at designer stores? Harper, please. And did you or did you not open credit cards in your husband's name without his knowledge? Silence. Parker's voice filled the quiet. Madison, your cousin Wesley is also here. He took time off work and flew in from San Antonio because you told him Preston wanted to discuss selling the ranch and needed real estate advice. Is that true? I never said he definitely wanted to sell, but you implied it. You let Wesley believe there was a potential business opportunity here. He's prepared a full market analysis based on the false information you provided. I could hear Madison starting to cry harder now. The sound of her world crashing down was more satisfying than I had imagined it would be. Mason's voice came through the phone, confused and desperate. I don't understand. Madison, what are they talking about? What credit cards? Mason? Harper's voice was gentle but firm. Your wife has accumulated approximately $25,000 in debt using your personal information without your knowledge. She's also borrowed over $10,000 from family members under false pretenses. That's impossible. Madison handles our finances, but she would never... Son, Parker interrupted. I'm looking at bank statements right now. Your signature is on applications for credit cards you apparently know nothing about. Madison. Mason's voice was barely a whisper. Is this true? The silence stretched on. Finally, Madison spoke, her voice broken. I can fix this. I can pay everyone back. If Preston would just help with Christmas. If we could just get through this gathering, Uncle Parker was going to help with Mason's career. Stop. Parker's voice was firm. Madison, there will be no career help. There will be no financial assistance. There will be no family support until you address your spending addiction and start telling the truth. Harper added, all family loans are being called in immediately. We want full repayment within 30 days, and if you can't manage that, we'll be involving attorneys. But where will we get the money? Mason asked, his voice hollow. That's not our problem, Parker replied coldly. Madison created the situation through lies and deception. She'll have to solve it. I could hear Madison sobbing now, the full weight of her collapsed house of cards finally hitting her. But I felt no sympathy. This was justice, long overdue. Mr. Crawford, Parker's voice returned to the phone. I want to thank you for having the courage to bring this to our attention. Madison has been deceiving our entire family for years. I'm just sorry it took so long to come to light, Parker. One more thing. When do you plan to return home? I checked my watch. It was 11:30 a.m. on December 23rd. The family intervention was proceeding exactly as I had hoped. Actually, Parker, I think I'll be returning this evening. It sounds like there are some important family discussions that need to happen. I think that would be wise. We'll be staying until after Christmas to make sure this situation gets resolved properly. I look forward to meeting you all under more honest circumstances. After I hung up, I sat back in my hotel chair and allowed myself a moment of deep satisfaction. For 3 years, I had been the invisible man who made their lives possible. Now, for the first time, they were facing the consequences of taking my generosity for granted. I checked out of the hotel that afternoon and drove slowly back to the ranch. As I pulled into the driveway at 6 p.m., I could see several rental cars parked outside. The Christmas gathering Madison had planned was indeed happening, just not the way she had envisioned it. I walked through my front door to find a house full of people, but not the festive atmosphere Madison had promised. Instead, there was the tense quiet of a family in crisis. Parker Torres, a distinguished man in his 60s, stood up to greet me. Mr. Crawford, I'm Parker Torres. Thank you for everything you've done. Please, call me Preston, and welcome to my home. Harper Torres, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, approached with a folder of documents. Preston, I want you to know that we've spent the day getting to the bottom of Madison's financial situation. It's worse than we thought. Mason sat on the couch, looking like a man who'd aged 10 years in one day. Madison was nowhere to be seen. Where is Madison? I asked. Upstairs, Parker replied. She's had quite a shock. We've made it clear that all family financial support is being withdrawn immediately, and she has 30 days to begin repaying the loans she obtained under false pretenses. And Mason? Mason looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. Dad, I'm so sorry. I had no idea what she was doing. The credit cards, the lies about her income, the plans to sell the ranch, I knew nothing about any of it. I studied my son's face and saw genuine shock and remorse. I believe you, Mason, but you also chose to ignore 3 years of watching your wife treat me like hired help. You're right. I was a coward. I chose the easy path instead of standing up for you. Harper cleared her throat. Preston, we've also discovered that Madison has been using your name and reputation in other ways. She's told several people that you endorsed various financial investments she was considering. We're working to make sure there are no other surprises. I appreciate your thoroughness, Harper. Wesley, a younger man who'd been quietly sitting in the corner, spoke up. Preston, I owe you an apology, too. Madison led me to believe you were interested in selling this place. I prepared a full market analysis and was ready to present you with offers. I feel like such a fool. Wesley, you were trying to help family. There's no shame in that. Just then, Madison appeared at the top of the stairs. She looked terrible, makeup smeared, hair disheveled, eyes swollen from crying. She descended slowly, like a condemned woman walking to her execution. Preston, she said quietly, I need to apologize. Yes, you do. I never meant for things to get so out of control. I just wanted our life to be better, and I thought if I could just make everything look more successful than it was. Madison, I interrupted, you didn't want a better life. You wanted an easier life, and you wanted someone else to pay for it. Parker stood up. Madison, we've arranged for you to speak with a financial counselor and a therapist. Your spending addiction has hurt too many people. What happens now? Mason asked. I looked around the room at Madison's family, good people who had been deceived but were now taking responsibility for the situation. Then I looked at my son, finally beginning to understand the cost of his cowardice. Now we establish some new rules, I said. First, Madison, you will never again have unsupervised access to this ranch. Any visits must be arranged in advance and approved by me. Madison nodded miserably. Second, Mason, you will take over all financial responsibilities in your marriage. Madison has proven she cannot be trusted with money. I understand, Dad. Third, you will both enter counseling, separately and together. Your marriage might be salvageable, but it will require complete honesty and hard work. Parker extended his hand to me. Preston, I hope you'll consider our family your friends. We had no idea what you were enduring. As I shook his hand, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 3 years, the satisfaction of being treated with genuine respect. The Christmas BBQ that never was had turned out to be the best gift I could have given myself, my dignity restored, and my family finally understanding the true meaning of gratitude.